Video games are changing so fast, and it's not just about better graphics anymore. We're seeing these huge shifts in how games are made, who they're for, and honestly, what they even do for us. So today, we're going to dive into three of the biggest frontiers: the AI that's building the worlds, the characters that are starting to look a lot more like us, and the real impact these games are having on our own minds. Okay, just look at this for a second. What you're seeing is a developer on Roblox basically talking a car into existence, just using normal language. This isn't just some fancy new tool, okay? This is a completely different way of building virtual worlds. It's lowering the barrier for anyone to create, and it's changing the actual code that brings these games to life. So, let's start right there with the foundation, the code itself. Our first stop is going to be digging into this new frontier of artificial intelligence and how it's literally constructing the digital worlds of tomorrow. So, what is generative AI really? Well, it's a kind of artificial intelligence that doesn't just look at data that already exists. It actually creates something totally new, totally original. We're talking about algorithms that can write dialogue, design art, or, as you're about to see, build entire planets from scratch. And this right here just shows you the mind-blowing scale of it all. This is from an upcoming game called Light No Fire, and it's using this AI tech to generate a single playable planet the size of Earth. I mean, think about that. Something that would take a whole team of artists hundreds of years to build by hand, AI can now generate procedurally. It's just a massive leap forward in how we think about world building. But this kind of immense power also brings up some pretty huge questions. Could this technology end up replacing human artists and developers? And if an algorithm is telling a story, whose story is it actually telling? There's a real fear here that we could lose that unique, thoughtful touch that really only human creativity can bring to the table. Okay, so let's shift gears. We've talked about the code that builds these worlds, but now let's talk about the characters who actually live in them. Because as the technology is changing, so are the conversations we're having about who gets to be the hero and what their stories get to look like. To really get why this quest for representation is so important, we have to look at who is actually making the games. As you can see here, the industry is still overwhelmingly male and white. But what's really interesting is that while a pretty significant number, 21% of developers identify as LGBTQ+, that diversity hasn't always shown up in the games themselves. And that gap is exactly why this whole conversation is so critical. And that brings us to a really important idea: tokenism. This is what happens when you get the appearance of diversity, but without any real substance. It's about checking a box, just adding one character from an underrepresented group to say you did it, instead of writing a meaningful, complex person. So what's the cure for tokenism? Well, it's intersectionality. This is the understanding that people aren't just one thing. All of our identities, our race, our gender, our orientation, our abilities, they all overlap to create totally unique experiences. Real, authentic representation means actually exploring that incredible complexity. And man, you can really see this evolution play out over time. Back in the 80s, you had Birdo from Super Mario Bros. 2, who was described in the manual with some very complicated and outdated language. Then, in 2000, The Sims accidentally allowed same-sex relationships in a demo, and thank goodness the developers just decided to keep it in. And then you fast forward to 2020, and you have Lev from The Last of Us Part 2, a central, deeply written trans character, voiced by a trans actor. The journey has been really long, but the progress is definitely there. And that progress has had such a deep, real-world impact. Just take this person's experience with The Sims. They're describing this private, safe little world where they could explore their identity, a place to figure things out without any judgment. This comment just captures it so perfectly. It shows how these virtual lives were so tied to players' real ones. For so many people, The Sims wasn't just a game, it was this tool for self-discovery. And it was so obvious that even their sister could see it looking back. And this quote right here just powerfully sums up the potential of what seems like a simple life simulation game. By giving players the freedom to create and be whoever they wanted, it became this incredible tool for people to discover and really affirm who they truly were. So that brings us to our final act. Let's move our focus from the code and the characters to the person who's actually holding the controller, you, the player. We're going to explore how games are becoming this really important space for mental health and well-being. You've probably heard the term cozy games. Titles like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing have become these huge cultural touchstones, offering an escape that's all about comfort, creativity, and calm instead of competition and stress. So what really makes a game cozy? Well, the main ideas are that there's no stress, the themes are wholesome, and the whole point is to have a positive, calming experience. It's pretty much gaming as self-care, like a digital comfy blanket you can just wrap yourself in after a long day. And this is not some small niche thing. The hashtag cozy games has almost a billion views on TikTok. That number is just staggering, and it shows this huge cultural shift. There's this massive desire for games that soothe us instead of just hyping us up, and a giant community has been built around finding peace through playing. But gaming's relationship with mental health isn't always about comfort. Sometimes it's about understanding something difficult. A game like Depression Quest wasn't designed to be fun in the traditional sense. It's a game made by people with actual lived experience to build empathy, to simulate the daily choices and struggles of living with depression. And this shows another massive evolution. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that a study found that 3/4 of games showed mental illness in these really negative, stereotypical ways. But now you have games like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, where the developers actually worked with neuroscientists and people who experienced psychosis to create a portrayal that was both authentic and truly eye-opening. So the huge takeaway here is this. Games are becoming these powerful empathy engines. They give us this unique, interactive way to understand experiences that are completely different from our own. They let us literally walk a mile in someone else's digital shoes. And that just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As AI completely changes how worlds are built, and as our culture demands characters that feel real, and as we start to see games as tools for understanding our own minds, you just have to ask, what's next? What new amazing stories is this medium going to help us tell about who we are and maybe who we can become?